and whether or not we're willing to do the discipline of whether or not we can perform based on what the professional educator, the appropriate trainer, who is a master of the language to the point in which he is a master, can help us. You see, I always knew when I timed out with a student because I would take them to my level or above, and then I would hand them off to my native family. They, of course, were more proficient than me because of the proclivity of the fact that they lived and breathed that culture for so many years. They were born into it. My skills, however, were always complimented by many Japanese people, including my own family members, who would say, "I don't know how to answer that question, but he does," because of all the reading and all the studying I did about grammar as well as vocabulary. My vocabulary is what usually impressed people in the Japanese language, that I could do a lot. My great sadness was that people who lived in the apartment complex I moved into after I lost my spouse literally got into my belongings and started shredding my Japanese language materials. No one gave them the lawful right to touch my property, but all of that incredible intellectual property and translations that my old spouse and our friend and I did together on some manufacturing things were ruined by these adolescent boys to men who were in maintenance, who I'm pretty sure were allowing themselves to enter my home and take things and move things about. I would often come home and find that my toothbrush had been moved around, or things in my office were missing, and things of my property from my Japan travels went disappearing. Also, incredible volumes of my CDs on my language program were gone, and much of my photographs of my family ended up missing. I am exceptionally proficient in packing. I do things very organized, and I got really tired once I finally moved out of that apartment complex to put things into storage so that I could have a life of travel and selling my Christian and Japanese language works to people on the road and on the go, that I would come back to my storage unit and things that I had packed together would be totally torn apart. I would find cords to important electronics put in a bag as if someone was going to steal them away and take them out. Much of my property was being stolen by the people who lived there, and I know because they would often do the slip. You see, the liars always slip. I had never shown any of my property to the management couple, Michael and Michelle, who ran the place. Yet she would often make comments about some of my night-oriented things that were in my storage unit. I had some things set aside for the longest time for my love's children. I had put them in special boxes. I had marked them with my nickname for them, and openly, I think, before I left this last time, I actually put their names on those bins. I don't have family members who I allowed to have keys to my storage, but I believe they took those keys without my permission. I have also been told that either the sheriff has taken my property, which wasn't their lawful right to do, without ever giving me notice, or family members have moved it. Either way, I guarantee most of my special artifacts of my Oriental collections have been stolen. I'm pretty sure this happened. You see, I did leave a couple things with a family member for her life because she purchased it for me, and I didn't feel that the relationship warranted me keeping it any longer. But in truth, my scrolls and other things of my life and my selection of Chinatown and Japan have been stolen and pilfered. Those were hundreds of dollars worth of collections. Antiques are mine. Even when I was in impounded positions, a netsuke, which is a very high value item, was with me all along my journey as a part of my religious work and my religious beliefs and faith. And I believe that, along with all of my religious artifacts that I had carried with me to court that day, not ever expecting to end up in jail for so long, were stolen, along with presentation pants, red shirts, and other gifts that I had prepared for the Christmas time I had hoped to have with the woman I love. Some beautiful jewelry that I had made for her and her children have gone missing. My practical pendulum, which was a keepsake of mine, that has a little chip in its rosewood and its capabilities, are completely removed from my property. I would like all my journals back. I would like my 24 thumb drives of intellectual property returned. I would like everything on the list that I can remember, including belt buckles inherited from my late father, things I had purchased along the way that are hard to replace, and my hats that belonged to my son that I would keep and wear in honor of him returned. But how does a person get that done? You see, I wasn't able to go pick it up like a normal person. I went to the property room, and when I got there, they said, "I'm sorry, the stuff's not here." I'd already been told by a particular person who was handling my recreation that it could be very possible that it would all be disappearing. And isn't that interesting? That's precisely what happened. His name was Joshua Roberts, and openly he should have been on top of that, protecting my rights to my property underneath the Fourth Amendment of federal law, not some local sheriff's idea of whether or not they were required to write a list down of all my things. Other parts of my life were in that bag, and I have a list someplace. But someone kept putting their hands in my pockets while I slept and taking things out of my pockets. Important papers that I had, I found ripped to pieces. And I'd like to know what professional person thought they had the right to put their hands on me in the middle of the night. There was no lawful right for them to do that, no right under God in heaven, and most certainly no right underneath international human rights law or federal law for any human being to be putting their hands on me or drugging me in such a way that I couldn't wake up or playing audio tones on me in such a way that I can't be in control to do such a thing. You see, we have film, movies, wonderful things that come out of Hollywood that teach us about new technologies that we need to be cautious of that are coming in from foreign lands. There is a point where we need to close the border. There is a point where we need to talk to people about the truth of technology. There is a point where our social media companies are violating our rights under telecommunication laws, which allow us the freedom of assembly underneath the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. You see, that says we have the right to assemble and to connect in fellowship with whoever we so choose. But these social media companies that are using telephone lines are preventing us from being able to interact with people. I've seen it time and time again with these social media companies that want to solicit us in for free, and then they start to take away our rights by saying, "I'm sorry, you have to pay for that service." It makes sense. They're serving a lot of people. They're selling a technology. They make billions of dollars each year, but they're dividing us in a way that's not right. We want to reach out to someone new. We want to do a special marketing demographic targeting situation, and we can't do it because they want to tell us that we don't have the right to talk to someone that we've never met before. That is a lie. I can walk up to anyone on the street and solicit them for a conversation. Even now, as I'm sitting here outside of a wonderful little place that's been very kind to me, I had two people walk up from a car and try to ply me with pizza. I didn't mind that. It was very thoughtful and kind, and they actually represent the particular house that has been very kind to me over the last few weeks to months. But openly, I already had a pizza, and I couldn't accept their pizza. It wouldn't be right. At the same time, homeless people need to be wary of accepting free food from places and from people, partially because employees don't pay attention to the laws on the tainting of food when they want to play a game because they're so bored in their life or they're so maliciously angry about where they are in life. But in truth, we only have moments of time to tell people how to eat, and I prefer to eat canned foods. It doesn't mean that I don't like fresh foods. It just means that I have a very specific way in which I ensure that I'm not being harmed and mistreated and malnourished by someone who's in a foreign land or comes from there and is now handling our food. You see, we have sort of lost the art of culinary. We sort of don't even have culinary schools in particular states and big, large cities. That is foolish. We need to have culinary art institutes all over the place now. We need to encourage children to learn to cook. These little master chef programs on television that you can sort of see are wonderful at encouraging children to be artists. I don't know how their parents train them to do this, but it's quite amazing how these kids can cook circles around an old man like me, or perhaps a person like you. But the truth is, the greatest gift we have is feeding our people. The greatest job we have, not in terms of its duties, but in terms of its value to the world, is in the care and feeding of our nation's people. We must produce a higher paid wage for these people. We must produce a greater regard for them. We are entrusting them with our cellular health. We are entrusting them with our lives in a way. And there are plenty of foreigners who'd like to just slip a little Mickey into our food or into our beverage to take over our lives in a way that's immoral, completely under God's house, and illegal underneath international human rights law and federal law. And here's the rub. These people come here as students based on the generosity or the affluence or the scholarship of their families, but then they don't leave and go home. They apply for ways of staying here when they should be taking their international studies and applying them in their own nation's peoples to help them to produce better life, better society, better everything for their own countries. We have to be cautious, is true. It was very difficult for me to bring an international person over to America, and that's the way it should be. But it took a long time, it took a lot of money, it took a lot of proof of money, and it took a lot of my family's time. Because family becomes family. When the person is not family, we don't care as much. When a person is not us, we might care even less. It's amazing that people want to provide to me their leftover food. Food that they literally sat there and talked with their friend or their family member over for the last hour, which means that as they're talking, spit naturally flies from the mouth. We've seen this in slow action type photography, and it then goes across the food. What it means is that food can be accidentally tainted with our germs, but at the same time can be tainted with other things. I've actually found in trash cans sleeping agents, and I get worried about that because I pray that the person is only using for themselves. But there are oils that can be put on things that we don't even taste that makes us fall asleep. There are audio pitches that can be utilized to crunch our mind and shut us down, almost like a light switch. This is what we're learning from these films that we see of MI6 and otherwise that teach us about the world that's beyond our borders. We need to be cautious with the foreigners coming in. We need to be looking at those who are here illegally and helping them to return to their homeland. They don't get a pass just because they're able to do something phenomenal like play soccer or something else. In life, we have moments of time to prove who we are in God's house. And God's house says, "Thou shalt not take from thy hands." Which means when the Lord provides us something, we should honor it and cherish it all the days of our life. When we don't play that card, when we don't listen to God, when we don't hear someone say, "Stop interfering in my life," we put ourselves at legal and lethal risk. Legal risk because we can be sued and lose our shirt in that situation. Lethal risk because if the person's being stalked or mobbed and they have a rage growing and burning inside them, they might just produce for themselves the self-defense opportunities of the Second Amendment, and they might just take you out for your idiotic playing of games on their life. No one has the right to play games on another human being's life. This is the Lord's policy. Some of the television shows, the talk shows that are going on during the day, like People We Love, like Ellen, but there's shows that play people into stupid games, are ridiculous. It's a waste of public money, it's a waste of time, and it's a poor choice of educating our teens and others on how to behave from the public sector. In life, we have moments of time to prove who we are in the house of God, and the only way to do that is to love on people with the kindness of the Lord. And if we can't do that, then we shouldn't be involved with them at all. Thanks for listening.